Motion be agreed to. I'll call the member for Layla.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I absolutely am pleased to rise to speak on what I believe is an incredibly important issue and I thank the member for Hotham and I thank the member for Hasluck. Deputy Speaker, this is an issue that goes to the heart of our schools, goes to the heart of our communities. Having come from the public sector education in Victoria, I know the work that has gone on in schools to ensure that students' human rights are being met, to ensure that from the principal down, inclusive practices are occurring on the ground in our schools. And I've worked at the coalface with parents of students with disability as they enter what they perceive to be often a hostile environment. This is difficult work. It is time-consuming work. It is important work. It is imperative that all of our students in all of our schools have high expectations made of them from their parents and from their schools. And Deputy Speaker, I was one who was heartened before the election to hear Minister Pyne, on the 23rd of August say that more funding for people with disability through the disability loading would be in our schools in 2015. It is now 9 months into 2015 and this promise of new funding has not been met. The reality is, because of this government's cruel broken promise, students with disability will simply be locked into educational disadvantage and will not have the resources they need to meet their full potential, despite how hard schools work. The resources need to be put in place. The review should have been completed. That's why there's a Senate inquiry, Deputy Speaker, because Labor has initiated it, because we believe every student, including students with a disability, deserve a great education. We believe they all need to have expectations set that they can learn and the supports put in places to ensure that they do learn. Now, we've heard from the member for Hotham of the research by Children with Disability Australia that it's showing as many as 1 in 4 children with a disability have been denied enrolment. This is an appalling statistic, but it's a statistic that can be addressed with action from this government. Keeping promises is what government is about. And we have thousands of families waiting for this promise to be kept. Deputy Speaker, in Victoria, the state government is conducting a government schools funding review conducted by Steve Bracks, of course, our former Premier. He's released an interim report across this weekend, and there are a couple of key things in there that I think worthy to have echo in this chamber today. Schools and the community want trust and confidence in Victoria's funding system. A fairly simple statement, but one that we need to see heeded. They want a system that provides resources to schools based on the educational needs of students to obtain a high quality education. Again, something that needs to be addressed by this government. Specifically, with students with disability, the interim report reads, stakeholders are concerned that funding is not meeting the diverse needs of students with a disability, compounded by the growth in numbers of students. Many parents have fought for extra funds for their children and will resist schools pooling funds for broader use. Concerns were also raised that children with learning difficulties are not funded in the same way as students with disabilities. These are the issues that Minister Pyne's promised before the election go to the core of. And yet, it is September in 2015 and still we hear nothing. Deputy Speaker, our parents, our teachers and carers work incredibly hard, but they need to be supported by government. They need this government, they need Minister Pyne, to focus on the things that are needed in our schools. To take responsibility, not have the federal government walk away from its responsibility in our schools. This is an issue that differs state by state, and until we get a national approach to students with disability in our schools, we will continue to have what happens in Queensland to be different what happens in Victoria, and to drive parents to despair, Deputy Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to.